Good afternoon. Sorry. If you can take your seats, we can start. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maher Nasser. I'm the Director of the Outreach Division in the UN Department of Global Communications. Welcome to the Sports for Sustainable Development Goals, an event that we have organized with the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, DESA, the UN Office for Partnerships, and jointly with the missions of Monaco and Qatar to mark the International Day of Sport for Development and Peace, which falls on Saturday. We know it's not today, but we didn't want to bring you here on Saturday, so I think you can give us a brownie for that. This year's discussion will focus on the impact sport has on promoting and implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. And sport can be much more than sport. I'm not a sports person, but I ran 3 marathons, and I think I know what that means because I use it to raise scholarships for young women in Gaza and the West Bank. And it was heartful to see that 7 young women could go to university because I tortured myself and I ran a marathon. So sport can be a lot of things that we can see, going to hear more about it today. Please share your thoughts on the discussions using the hashtag Sport for SDGs. One word, Sport for SDGs, using the numeral 4. We want to hear more, and we want this to be an interactive discussion. Whether you're in the room or you're watching us on the webcast, please do join us with using the social media hashtag. To formally welcome you now, it is my great honor and pleasure to introduce Ambassador Isabelle Picot of Monaco. Isabelle.
Thank you so much, dear Madam Deputy Secretary General. Welcome all to the United Nations for the celebration of the already sixth International Day of Sport for Development and Peace. So today's program, and this is how we worked with the Department of Global Communication, will highlight successful and concrete examples, showcasing the power of sport in achieving the SDGs. So to reach the 17 Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, Member States recognize that sport is an important enabler. So from our childhood and throughout our lives, sport contributes to well-being, in particular in regard to health, which is SDG 3. Sport can ensure inclusive and quality education for all and promote lifelong learning, and this is SDG 4. Sport has a capacity to promote gender equality, and we have a new paragraph in the agreed conclusion on the Commission on the empowerment of women. Yes, and this is SDG 5. We also know that sport contributes to making cities and communities more inclusive, and this is SDG 11. And last but not least, sport can be used as a meaningful tool for the prevention of conflict and the promotion of long-lasting peace, SDG 16. So sport is also a great equalizer, and it is particularly true for people with disabilities. Paralympic Games break down stereotypes and empower youth and people to be leaders of change. Olympism transcends human values and work to build a peaceful and better world through sport, which requires mutual understanding with a spirit of friendship, solidarity, and fair play. The global sport industry was estimated in 2017 at $1.3 trillion. The top 2 world's most popular sports, soccer and basketball, gather over 5 billion followers. So whether you are a spectator or an athlete, whether you practice sport in competition or for leisure, sport is in everyone's life. Partnership and SDG 17 are the centers of the implementation of Agenda 2030. And what is better and more powerful than sport to bring people together? It is a universal language that unites and speaks to everyone. So we warmly thank all partners of the Group of Friends and the US system, as well as all relevant stakeholders, and many of whom are here today with us, who spare no effort to work hand in hand to include sport in every possible dimension of our endeavors. So in conclusion, I have the pleasure to introduce the new co-chair of the Group of Friends on Sport, my dear colleague, Her Excellency Sheikha Alia Ahmed bin Saif Al Thani, permanent representative of the State of Qatar. Our two countries are privileged to host major sport events, and sport are fully integrated into Monaco and Qatar public policies, from education to health, from organizations to infrastructure. Alia, my dear, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Pico. Of course, Madam Deputy Secretary General, my sister Amina Mohammed, distinguished ambassadors, delegates. Thank you so much for being with us today here. And of course, I'm so delighted to co-chair the Group of Friends on Sports with my dear colleague and friend, Ms. Isabel. It's a dear issue to both of our countries, as she has explained earlier. I'm so delighted. We're planning this event together as well with the Department of Public Information and with DESA. This is a collaborative effort that brings together an issue of great importance, which is sports for development and peace. As we celebrate the 6th International Day of Sport, I'm proud to note that Qatar is one of the few countries to dedicate a day for sports. Qatar's National Sport Day is one of the highlights of our national holiday calendar. And one of that brings people from all walks of life together to promote the benefits of an active and healthy lifestyle and the unique power of sports. Behind is our deep belief that the world is a better place when nations come together through sport and societies progress and grow. We strongly believe that sport is key to the empowerment of women and girls, healthy families, peaceful societies, and consequently implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Hosting the first World Cup in the Middle East in 2022 is an opportunity in Qatar that we consider of the utmost importance for the benefit of our wider region and the Arab world and beyond. We view the event as a catalyst for Qatar and the region to accelerate social progress and to build a better future for generations to come. For instance, Generation Amazing is an initiative that we launched in order to leverage the power of sport to instigate social change, break down social barriers, increase access to sport, and enhance community integration. It uses football for development initiatives to address social issues in countries with an identified need in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. It started in 2010 during our bid for the FIFA World Cup and will continue long after we host the World Cup in 2022. We also support UNODC to implement the Doha Declaration implementation program that aim to promote a culture of lawlessness. Under this program, which actually was launched when we have hosted the 13th UN Congress on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, where the use of sport is promoted for youth crime prevention in a meaningful way. These efforts include the development and piloting of an innovative sport-based program to train cognitive behavior and social skills to youth who are at risk, called Line Up, Live Up. I'll stop here. There is a lot to talk about. But I'll stop here to introduce one of the most remarkable personalities that are affecting our daily lives here in our UN community, my dear sister, Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed.
Thank you so much. My sisters, Ambassador Isabel Pico and Ambassador Alia Saif Al Thani, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and I just want to give a special recognition to Juan Pablo Salazar. I had a great conversation just in this small time that we've met. Thank you for being so inspirational. And of course, my compatriot, Masai Ujiri. Welcome. I'm really delighted to join this celebration of International Day of Sports for Development and Peace, and it's really important that development and peace, and both, I think, we strive every day in the United Nations to try to make sure that we can transition from all the crises and conflict that we see to peace and to development. And so thank you to the amazing ladies for making this happen and bringing us together. As Nelson Mandela reminded us, sport has the power to change the world. In times of divisions and distrust, sport has helped to bring people and communities together. It's also helped us to find common ground. I remember a couple of decades ago with an NGO I had in my village in Nigeria, I had summer school. And what we did was to take the schools and bring half of a group of children who have and half who don't have, and to bring them for extra lessons in math and English, hard in the day, in the beginning of the morning, but to bring them together with board games when it was really hot outside, and in the evening when it was cooler, to put them on the sports field. And I saw what children did to bring each other together to ensure there was no exclusion, because in that class there were girls, Muslim girls, and there were also people living with disabilities. And here, when one of them thought that the young boy was not able to join them because he had polio, he suffered from polio, could not join them, they all banded together and they found the resources for a wheelchair for him to participate in sport. And when suddenly somebody shouted out that, the young girl, Muslim girl, could not participate in sport because the religion said she couldn't, very quickly everybody went to look at the Quran to find that, in fact, there wasn't anywhere there that said that she couldn't participate in sport, and they made sure that she was able to. So it is about bringing people in. It's about inclusion, finding unity where we are in these days so full of distrust. I'd like us to think about, again, the common ground that was brought together in 1995, the Rugby World Cup in South Africa, emerging from apartheid, rallied together under the name of sport. Think about the stories of soldiers that are climbing over the trenches of the first Christmas Eve of the First World War to play football and to bring about a momentary truce on the Western Front. Think about table tennis in the 1970s, thawing tensions during the Cold War and giving birth to the term ping-pong diplomacy. So sport has the power to align our passion, energy, enthusiasm around collective causes. And this is precisely when hope can be nurtured and trust can be regained. It is in our collective interest to harness the tremendous power of sport to help us build a better and more sustainable future for everyone. Indeed, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development identified sport as an enabler for sustainable development. Sport can help us to promote peace, tolerance, respect, contribute to the empowerment of women and young people, and advance health, education, and social inclusion. The United Nations recognizes the power of sport to bring people together and achieve our common goals. Last year, the Secretary-General issued a report on strengthening the global framework for leveraging sport for development and peace. To direct our ambitions and efforts, both the 2017 Kazan Action Plan and the Global Action Plan on Physical Activity from 2018 to 2030 are tools for convergence and coherence around sport for development and peace. But of course, no institution or entity can do this alone. To achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, we need partnerships, genuine ones between all parts of society, especially our youth and our local communities. Today, you will learn more about some important sporting projects on which we are collaborating with an array of partners from around the world. But let me just cite two examples. We're working closely with the International Olympic Committee and the Tokyo Organizing Committee for the Olympic and Paralympic Games to raise global awareness of the Sustainable Development Goals. And last year I was in Tokyo. It's an amazing effort that's been made where you see the games being greened, really tackling the sustainable development issues. The Tokyo 2020 Games Sustainability Plan and ambitions are rooted in delivering sustainable games and showcasing many of the innovative solutions that they have. We welcome in particular efforts to address climate change, consider human rights and labor and fair business practices. We're also working closely with football's FIFA to raise awareness of the SDGs at the local community levels. The partnership is about such topics as advancing women in leadership and setting policies and making the most of sport as a tool for youth development and building life skills. Sport can also mobilize cross-generational participation and serve as an effective vehicle to reach the most vulnerable, including people living with disabilities. As leaders in this field, each of you here today has the power, the network, and resources to make a meaningful difference. Let us intensify our shared efforts in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and truly recognize the power of sport to change the lives of individuals, of communities, countries, and beyond. We have the opportunity to change the manner in how sporting events are governed and managed in the day-to-day operations. Green procurement policies, bidding proposals that comply with socio-environmental considerations are just two additional areas that I think we can call upon everyone for further engagement and support. So finally, thank you once again for being here. Thank you for your engagement. Thank you for helping the world score 17 goals for humanity.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Secretary General. Thank you, Ambassador Pico, Ambassador Al-Thani. What inspirational and great material you have given us to start the day with. We have now heard from the organization, we have heard from 2 member states, and I think the next few sessions will also bring to us people from the sports industry, from media, and from the private sector, and how this theme of sport for development and peace, for the SDGs, can really be the spirit of the future. Just a point of order for the SDG, for the hashtag that you see on the screen. It's sport for the SDGs, not sports. So there may be, if you want to use the one that is on the original program, it's sport without the S. I think maybe we can fix it. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you the moderator for the discussions this afternoon. She's the only female sports anchor on Fox 5 San Diego. She traveled the world in 2015 giving talks on conservation, and in 2017 she won an Emmy for her coverage of St. Lucia landscape. Please welcome Tabitha Lipkin.
Hello, thank you all for coming today. It's an honor to be here to moderate this panel. Sports, of course, are a language that we all speak, whether it's football or football, rugby or baseball, and regardless of political and geographic boundaries, sports, they do bring us together. We're here today to learn and to grow with our amazing group of panelists on ways in which we can make this world better through unique and powerful sports development initiatives outside of the box and focus on human rights. Of course, it is now my honor to introduce my first panelist, Mr. Masai Ujiri, President of the Toronto Raptors and founder of the Giants of Africa Foundation. Wherever you want. Did we want to show his video? This is Fox 5 Sports Final, and I'm Tabitha Lipkin. History wasn't even supposed to be made here, but it was. As you know, the game was moved from Mexico City here to the LA Coliseum. You've been coming to a lot of World Series. You've done this, a lot of interviews, met a lot of people. What's your favorite part about baseball? People travel from all over the world to San Diego to cage dive with great whites.
This F-18 Hornet tops out at about 1,200 miles per hour.
How are you going to prepare to grab this 8th NASCAR championship? Go Vaqueros tonight, Friday night football. Today, you cannot rain on the Padres fan parade. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and sometimes your team acquires Manny Machado. Thank you. That was the wrong video. But now here's your video, I hope. Don't we love technology?
For the last 3 years, we've been building the Global Goals World Cup around the world. We've been playing 6 places, and every time we come back and we play the finals in New York. Are you guys excited? And this year, we challenged the idea of saying...
That's okay. This is the fun part where we can start the actual conversation, because it's such an honor to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My first question, of course, please walk me through the journey in which you went from Nigeria to president of the Toronto Raptors.
First of all, it's such an honor to be here. I've never been in the In the UN, you see it on TV, and when they have the event in September, I come and meet with all these presidents, but you always see everybody in here, and it's such an honor for me to be in here, but such an honor to be around such great people, especially Amina Mohammed. I have to mention my Nigerian ties, and I told her I still have a grudge with her for not running for president, so I had to mention that. But I grew up in northern Nigeria, Zaria. I know Amina is very familiar with this area, and we know what goes on with youth and people around those places. But I didn't grow up here. I grew up on the continent of Africa up to when I was 19 years old. I was fortunate to come to prep school and go to junior college and in North Dakota, and go to college in Montana. You think of all the culture shock and going from northern Nigeria to this. And then very fortunate too to play professional. I left Montana State actually early to go play professionally in Europe, and I wasn't very good, and I realized that going from making this amount of money and it starts to go down instead of going up, and where was my career going? And I had to figure that out very quickly, and I'm glad I did, because I went into coaching and scouting and was lucky to get an unpaid job with the Orlando Magic, an NBA team, and I used the niche of scouting in Africa and looking for talent, and I think that's one thing that we have to talk about here is the unique talent on the continent. It's not, I think people see it as just talent, just walking around, but it's very, very, it's very unique to see the height, to see the strength, to see the athletes that are raw, that come from the continent. And I had like a very curious mind of maybe using this to open the eyes of people in the NBA. And I was lucky to get a full-time job with the Denver Nuggets and continue to grow. And luckily, I got promoted every year. And I was lucky Brian Colangelo hired me with the Toronto Raptors to be assistant GM. And then I got my first gig as the person in charge with the Denver Nuggets, and then went back to Toronto now as president. I've been there 6 years, and we keep knocking on that door, trying to win an NBA title or be one of the best teams in the NBA. But the opportunity has been unique. I am thankful to the NBA and the commissioner and people around that have just helped me. As Amina said, sports brings people together, and there's so many people that just help you get to where you are.
And it helps when you have Kawhi Leonard on your team, right? It doesn't hurt.
It does. It does.
Now, an important part of what you do is you like to give back to the community, and you founded the Giants of Africa Foundation. Tell me a little bit about the initiatives within that foundation.
Well, given this opportunity that I had being from Africa, I thought it was very unique that there's this talent, and I was opportune to be made director of Basketball Without Borders, which the NBA organizes in Africa every year. And I wanted to take this model to my country in Nigeria, and I did that. And then I wanted to spread it out to other countries and see how you affect talent, how you affect youth, how you teach these kids not only the basic fundamentals of the game, but also just unique life skills that we're not very sometimes accustomed to or pay very much attention to, especially in the days of social media now and telephones and all these things. So whether it's shaking the hand of a person and saying, looking in their eyes and saying, my name is Masai Ujiri and I'm from Nigeria, you find it very difficult for kids, youth, to know that. And I thought it was very very helpful for us to send these messages to these kids. Teaching the basic fundamentals of the game has been very important for me because of how I grew up from my American coach teaching me in Nigeria. And I thought taking Giants of Africa and helping youth develop. The second thing is young girls. I think it's very important that young girls have a voice in this world. It's very important that young girls have a voice in Africa. And sports is a unique place that people can actually use this as a platform. The third thing is I wanted to use it to go to different parts of Africa where people don't usually want to go to, whether it's refugee camps or places like Kayole in Kenya, but really hard areas where sometimes in this day and age people are afraid to go to. And I think it's really important. I got the opportunity to go to Kankuma, to go to Dadaab, to go to Lamu, to go to many places around the continent and really touch youth and help them and teach them that it doesn't matter where you come from, you have hope, and sports can give you that ability to get to where you come from, because I didn't grow up in a refugee camp, but I grew up in Zaria in Nigeria, and it's a very unique place, and it was difficult growing up, but look at where I am now, and I'm not the smartest person in the world, there's so many more youth that are way smarter than me.
When we were talking earlier, I asked you, what was the moment you realized you were making a difference for other people? What was that moment for you?
When I think of that moment, I think last year when I went to Samburu in Kenya, and you see how people sometimes live in this day and age, and this makes me, it's touchy for me, because you see girls that are going through like mutilation or early marriages and all these problems, and you try to make a difference there. And for me, the biggest thing was talking to the elders of that community and saying, you know what, this has to stop in some kind of way. And then talking to the youth and saying to stand up and talk for themselves. And every time I watch it, we videoed it, and every time I watch it, I look at the eyes of those elders, and I look at the eyes of those young girls. And then I look at the eyes of people that are trying to help, like Dr. Josephine there. And for me, it's touchy. Those are moments where, you know what, I'm really thankful for the teaching I got from some of the people that have helped me, whether it's in the MBA community or the MBA leaders in the MBA, or people that have taught me how to go and do community work, because you have to keep pounding, you have to keep going, you have to be resilient. And for me in this position, I have to have a voice. I have to have a voice to speak. Some of us get into positions where we don't use that opportunity. We don't use that opportunity to go out and speak for others. And it's very, very important that we do that, because we're there for a reason. And that's what I truly believe.
Well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing with us. Guess what? We have your video now.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
We'll see it now. I don't think about the 15 years. All I'm thinking about is like the future. Occasionally, I'll think about how we started. I also think that I was in the shoes of these kids, sitting down on a court just like that. God has just put us here for a reason, and you grow, and you become what you want to become.
Go right here can do wonders for your life. Basketball is important to you. Take it very seriously. You have a chance to help your family, to represent your country. You can change lives with this. Do you understand? Yeah. I say dream, you say dream. Dream.
I want you guys to be the next leaders. You guys have to be the example. We all have young kids. You guys have to be the example for them.
Thank you for being an example.
Thank you.
Next up, I'd like to please invite Ms. Laura Gentile, SVP of Marketing, ESPN, and Ann Rosenberg, SVP and Global Head of SAP Next Gen.
For the last 3 years, we've been building the Global Goals World Cup around the world. We've been playing 6 places, and every time we come back and we play the finals in New York. Are you guys excited? And this year, we challenged the idea of saying that sport can be played in many places, and we teamed up with SAP Next Gen, and we played on the 48th floor.
We are going to be commentating together. Crown Prince, how are you feeling right now?
I'm good, Femi. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Amazing view of the city. Amazing to be able to build a football field on the 48th floor like this. Thank you.
Now, I'm going to kind of go between the two of you talking about the different initiatives that you work with. But, Anne, I'm going to start with you. And I'd like to know more about SAP Next Gen and how it supports sustainable development goals like the Global Goals World Cup.
So first off, thank you so much. And a big thanks to Isabel and Elia, I think I said that right, and Amina. I represent SAP, the world's biggest software company in the world, and I'm actually just on the other side of Hudson Yards, and where we have a big dedication to United Nations and do a lot of work with United Nations across all the 17 global goals. So World Cup for the Global Goals, as you saw in the film up here, is a global movement that SAP have teamed up with. And as we heard from the earlier speakers, the beautiful thing about sport is that it unites people in a playfulness way. And we at SAP, who is in almost 200 countries around the world, we rely so much on education and the next generations because we know all jobs and all companies are enabled by technology. So when we started teaming up with World Cup for the Global Goals, where we organize matches around the world with youth, we go from Africa to all over APJ, to Latin America, and we end up with the finals in the Unga Week at a crazy place at 48th floor with all class at Hudson Yard, and we'll do that again this year, is because we realized by going out and educate youth on the SDGs in collaboration with World Cup for the Global Goals and all the great partners, UNDP, is that we can educate them for what really matters. And that is that we unite around driving a future which is much better than it is today. And on top of that, what we do is that we then educate the youth on technology at the same time. So we run boot camps on technology, and not to forget the whole topic that already was touched on, that's the whole topic about gender equality. And so some of the examples that I'm going to give also is that we need to see women in sport from a whole other lens that we do today. Women need to have a much better right around sport, and that's why we are teaming up with some of the big sport associations around the world also.
And Laura, you work in a similar situation in which you have the Global Sports Mentoring Program. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. And I also want to second the thank you to everyone for having us here today. It's an honor to be here. Masai kicked it off in a beautiful way, so thank you for that. And then, as I say, if Ambassador Pico asks me to go anywhere, I will, which is why I'm here. But representing ESPN is a great honor, as I mentioned, but we had started a business and an initiative now 10 years ago called ESPNW. And one of the most important projects within that business was the Global Sports Mentoring Program, which was a really unique combination of entities. The U.S. State Department literally called us up and said, would you be our media partner? We're thinking about doing a Global Sports Mentoring Program, and we see what ESPNW is doing, and we'd love you to be a part of it. And so, lo and behold, 8 years ago, we truly started a Global Sports Mentoring Program that really was the first of its kind for ESPN, the first of its kind even for the Walt Disney Company, which is our parent company, and has really shed a light on all the opportunities out there. You know, it's truly a global sports mentoring program. Women from 58 countries have already participated over the 10 years. We've had over 130 delegates, women, in the program. And sometimes when you hear mentoring, you think young women and girls. And we're intending to empower young women and girls, but the women who come over to the United States from all across the globe are 25 to 40-year-old executives. They're already established, they've already done incredible things, and they're coming over to the United States to be paired with senior female executives in sports, just for that additional polish, a little more sort of fine-tuning, help with a business plan and an action plan, and ultimately confidence. You know, these women come over to the United States and they see these female executives at the table with a voice, with ideas, holding their own in meetings, and they're sort of astounded. They're like, I don't have that opportunity. I don't get to do that. And it just really feeds their confidence that when they go back home, they can really be change agents. So it's a program 8 years in the making. We've now touched over 300,000 women and girls, because these women go back to their country and make a huge impact and have sports clinics and basketball clinics and run leadership camps. So there's so much more to talk about, but that's sort of the genesis of it all.
Can you tell us a specific example that you saw, like a change that you saw in a woman or a girl when they went back?
Well, you know, just even speaking from a mentor perspective, women, like I said, just feel so much more empowered, sort of seeing the strength of some female executives here in the United States. And so the notion of having a voice and having that little bit more courage to go back to their hometown or home country and make change. One incredible example is a woman named Geraldine Bernardo, who's from the Philippines, who she used to sail dragon boats in the Philippines, and almost everyone who comes to the United States in this program has been an athlete or played sports or obviously has an appreciation for sports. So Geraldine went home back to the Philippines with a specific action plan in mind, and then the typhoon hit back in 2013, and she completely changed her action plan and realized sports is an amazing mechanism for relief. And she started sports programs throughout the Philippines to really help people rebuild and find hope and recover from that devastation. So she's a woman who came here looking for some confidence, some refinement, some additional tools, and then she's making an enormous impact in her country almost overnight. You know, she was sort of thrown into the situation, and light bulbs went on thanks to the GSMP that, hey, I could use sports to really make a difference here.
And in reference to SAP Next Gen, they have a lot of gender equality initiatives. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So women in general, no matter what your industry you're in, whether it's sport and other industries, we need to make sure they have the right seat at the table. That just needs to be fixed in general. So what we are doing is that together with World Cup for the Global Goals, if it's around sports, and with our partner UN Women and with FQ Female Quotient, we are driving a movement where we, on two sides, one side is that we have a network of more than 3,700 universities in 117 countries. We're setting up FQ lounges, and now we're linking it to the sports club at the universities at the same time. And then when you, for example, when you go to Davos, or when you go to Cannes Lions, or the Unga Week, or all the gravity of important meetings that take place all over the world, where world leaders meet or industry leaders meet, and now also the big sports events. Like, for example, I'm sitting here from NBA All-Star, which happened in Charleston and in Charlotte. You know, it's all great, but what we're going to do, we actually go in and we have the hardcore conversations. So an example is, for example, recently at NBA All-Star, we went in and we had 1,000 amazing people every single day together with Bank of America, NBA, the city of Charlotte come together and speak about gender equality. And it was so successful, so we will keep on doing this because we need to make sure we all have an equal responsibility. And I think what is fascinating about sport is that, as I said earlier, it unites people. But it also gives attention, and the citizen, so we drive a citizen again that they announced at Davos beginning of the year, it brings the citizen of the world together. So now the plan is that we're going in from esports to Women Tennis Association, to all the different big sports going on, and really drive this conversation about what is the role of women and make sure they have the rights and have the hardcore conversations. Because when you have the big sports activity going on, the world are looking, right? And that's where you take those conversations.
And I kind of want to go off script for a second because I have two very powerful women in front of me. And I want to ask you, what has it been like to just watch the change that you've seen in the way women work with and in sports just over the past couple of years?
Well, it's been pretty great. I mean, with the ESPNW, I think we've really touched a nerve. You know, I think there are a lot of women in sports who, again, maybe didn't have a voice or felt like they were a little bit stuck in middle management or felt like they were the only one. Or the only one at the table in their company. And so at ESPNW, we established an ESPNW Summit. It's an annual conference that really brings together senior women in sports together. And it's almost like I like to say instead of the old boys network, you know, the new girls network. And the notion of, you know, there are other women like you, whether they're women at Fox or there's women at NBC or there's women at the NHL. And we should get to know each other, and we should support each other, and we should actually start doing business together. And the Summit's been one mechanism to do that. And then by virtue of that being around for 10 years, you just build out the network. You build out the network of women in sports who are talking to each other, and who are enabling each other, and who are supporting each other. And it's the similar thing with the Global Sports Mentoring Program. There's 15 to 20 women a year, but each year we grow that total number of women in the program, and so it's become a sisterhood. So you have women from New Zealand meeting women from Uganda, and women from Russia talking to women from China, and it's all enabled by this program, and it's really a beautiful thing to see because you realize you have more in common than differences. And I think that's the other thing just with the Women in Sports Executive Network. You realize, it's a similar struggle, and if we actually work together, we can make greater strides.
I think there's two very essential tipping points what happened in 2018, beginning of 2019, because the issue about women in sport, gender equality, has been here for years. So why do we believe that the change is happening now? So first of all, I think the work that UN Women is doing, and big thanks to Ms. Amina Mohammed, that all the work we do around UN Women, because in 2018 was a year where everybody realized, okay, we need to fix this. Not that we knew how to fix it, but we need to fix this. That was kind of clear for everybody. But of course, what was then super important beginning of 2019, that we couldn't keep on just talking about we're going to fix it. We needed to change the role of women. So women, back to you, the women coming together. So women need to lead the way. So what I love is happening here in 2019 in a very accelerated way, which is also needed, is that women are really leading the way. But it takes both a man and a woman to change this issue we have about gender equality. But so I also see that men are beginning to be more inclusive around it. So I definitely see the change, not just in sport, but across all industries. But especially the work that I do, World Cup for the Global Goals, which is just amazing, thanks to Mike and Enrique, is that there is a stage now, and it's based, because UN Women build this amazing SDG global framework, that people take the conversation very seriously. If you go to NBA All-Star, or you go to any of FIFA, everybody know it needs to be fixed. So they let us come in. They let us come in the public-private partnership manner and have those hardcore conversations. And that will lead to change.
Excellent. Thank you both so much for joining me up here. I now like to introduce yes, thank you. From the United Nations, Ms. Agnes Marcayu, Director of the UN Mine Action Source. Yeah, I grabbed the football. Can't forget it.
The new UN Mine Action Strategy 2019 to 2023 is accompanied by a global 5-year campaign, Safe Ground, which is designed to bring attention and assistance to the survivors of armed conflict.
Safe Ground promotes the linkage between mine action, sport, and the Sustainable Development Goals. It turns minefields into playing fields.
Supported by UN agencies, civil society organizations, and governments, Safe Ground aims to develop safe sports facilities where children, women and men can train, practice and play sports. The first step to restore security is to create safe ground.
I'd also like to please welcome Mr. Laurent Dupont from the Managing Director of Peace and Sport.
Through sport, you can start dialogue. The goal is not to develop sport. The goal is to foster cooperation, to foster understanding, and to foster peace.
This event is amazing for peace and sport and for the community here, because after 14 years, through sport, we're going to try to bring people together. Sport can do that, football especially also can do it.
We are coming here to show everybody that there is no problem against Greek side and this side, and this is not good thing that divided by Greek people or Turkish people. We are all together separate.
Εμείς ως ποδοσφαιριστές δεν έχουμε να χωρίσουμε κάτι. Είμαστε εδώ για να περάσουμε ένα μήνυμα ότι θέλουμε μια ειρηνική συμβίωση στον τόπο μας.
Hatred should not be transmitted. Tension should not be transmitted. Knowing each other through sport is a solution to foster better comprehension and a better life together.
And what an honor to be here with you both. So many important initiatives to talk about, but one in which you have been dealing with is the mine service that clears conflicted areas of unexploded devices. And you've actually been able to launch Safe Ground at some level in cities like Mogadishu, Cyprus, Mosul. Tell me a little more about that. Yeah, I think you can just pull. I think it just goes.
It works. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. It's a great day. There is nothing more natural for us to be present today. Thank you for inviting en masse. Tomorrow is International Mine Action and Mine Awareness Day. So what do we have in common? What we have in common is the ground on which we play. And the whole point of the Safe Ground campaign that Secretary General Guterres will launch tomorrow on the actual day is to turn minefields into playfields. And it's really a great pleasure and honor for me to have been pulled in, associated to this wonderful day by our two ambassadors, the ambassador of Monaco and of Qatar, because the whole point of what has been discussed earlier, the political declarations, the International Day, is what do you do next? What does it look like in real? And in real, you have a lot of people that you have heard about already who are taking action just to make it happen. And this is what at En Masse we do. So the Safe Ground campaign is a whole of UN, but it's a whole of everybody campaign that is aimed at everybody's going to be a champion. Take it on and just say, you are not doing anything in a conflict-contaminated area unless the ground is safe. So it's going to be safe ground, it's going to be safe home because of the millions of refugees and displaced who actually cannot come back home because it's contaminated, because they're going to lose their lives when they get back home. They will explode. Simple. That's what we see on TV. So safe ground, it's promoting, supporting, contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals. Why? Because nothing can happen in the continuum between conflict to resilience, reconstruction, rehabilitation, and I would say for a country to rebuild itself unless that issue is taken care of. And I want to pay also special tribute to the forgotten issue in all of this. Mine action, people think deminers. Okay, demining, that's all what people say, demining. No, it's mine action. Why? Because in mine action, we have the assistance to the survivors. And here I would like to salute, again, my good friend Juan Pablo, who welcomed me in this job 6 years ago when we launched a campaign together called Lend a Leg, where it was a very strange campaign. Everybody was pulling up their pants and showing a leg in just to remember that people who lose a leg or an arm are people. If you and I tomorrow we blow up on a mine or IED, God forbid, you're still you and I'm still me. And this is not the reality of the day. So what we do is focusing this campaign on the assistance to survivors, making sure that through sport, they will regain their dignity, they will regain their normalcy. So what do? We actually find ways of associating that sport, that hope that you were talking about, the gender part that we been mentioning. Everybody in a society has a right to hope, has a right to joy. Clearing a hospital, access to basic services, it's a given. We do that. These are the priorities that we carry out. But what we have found out as we were on the ground doing the job in the Mogadishus and Mosul and other places, I mean, soon Syria, is that you need to give people something else. And the return to normalcy is, of course, everything we know. It's about reconciliation, communities working together. It has to come from the communities. But it's also daily life that has been lost under the bombings, under the terrorist attacks, under the fear of living for years in the basement.
There's something really interesting that you do, and that is that you go into sport fields and you make sure they're clear of minds. Yeah. Why do you do that, and what has been the effect that you've seen in families in these communities?
Well, it started with demand. I'll give you an example. In the case of Mosul, destroyed. Go on YouTube, check out the various news networks. You will see West Mosul. It's worse than Dresden in the Second World War. Now, we were asked to open the way for the humanitarian community to come and render assistance safely, for the journalists to come and do their stories without blowing up. So we are the first responders. Very quickly, in the case of Mosul, we had done the Al-Shifa hospital, we rehabilitated water plants, electricity plants. That is where life comes back. But the UN Habitat, because we are working together, UN Habitat had established an IDP camp, a camp for internally displaced people, and it was near a stadium. Mind you, that stadium was 50% destroyed. But it was, one, a measure of safety to clear that land next to the camp, because a stadium is a stadium. At one point, somebody will want to venture there. And two, we felt that we could give a space to play, and it did. It's destroyed, people play. Mogadishu, we did it. We cleared one of the stadiums in Mogadishu. Unfortunately, because of the terrorist attacks that are hitting that city pretty much every day, having a high-level sport event there is not possible. But it is also symbolic. The communities know that there is a difference made by the arrival of the UN somewhere. I mean, there are also good stories about the UN, and that we are helping them get a little normalcy. In a place like Cyprus, which is work in progress for us, we have identified a place in the buffer zone. It's a country divided. It's not a country at war. And there, it was mine. So we identified the place with the UN mission there. We surveyed it. We cleared it. And the project is to turn that piece of land into a soccer field that will be accessed by the two sides of Cyprus through their respective checkpoints. So there is no political issue in there. The only thing we need is $150,000, which is no big deal. No, it's not. With the 150, it's not going to be just a soccer field. It's going to be a multi-sport complex. We're speaking a lot about football here, but there's way more than football in the world. And what we are looking at is any means that will give the opportunity for kids to laugh, for losers and winners to hug, for the audience to see people hugging, and just learn about life and have a little levity.
It's an incredible thing that you do, and it's an incredible way in order to bring people together. Now, Mr. Dupont, I want to ask you more about how does diplomacy through sport contribute to sustainable development goals?
Thank you. I just want to thank you also, the organizer, to welcome us and to give the opportunity to Peace and Sport to talk today. Peace and Sport is a young organization, 11 years old. It has been founded by Joël Bouzou, our president and founder, and it's under the high patronage of Prince Albert II. I just wanted to say, after Mrs. Marquez said, that Peace and Sport can only work if there is a safe place. I mean, this is very, very important, and we are going to talk, of course, about sport diplomacy, but without a safe place, nothing can happen. And in Peace and Sport, we truly believe that peace can be taught, peace can be promoted through sport, and that's exactly what we do. For us, sport is not only about performance. It's not only about victory or defeat, about winning or losing. It's something much more powerful because sports, it's a universal language that is everywhere in the world. The same rules are applied everywhere in the world. Whatever the country, whatever you come from, you play football the same way everywhere on the planet. And this is something very powerful. So that's what exactly we want to use. It's the rule of the sports and on all the sports, of course. And when we come to talk about sport diplomacy, just before telling that, when you have a safe place, a field of play, it's not only for the players and for the athletes. When you create sport activities on the ground, on the safe place, you can see that you have an impact also, of course, on the athletes, but also on the communities. A field of play belongs to the communities. It doesn't belong only to the athletes. And this is something very important that we need to know. It's as long as you have a field of play, you can have a large impact, even for people who doesn't make sports on it. So when it comes to sport diplomacy, in Peace and Sport, we think that maybe where politics have some issue to handle the big issue they had, sports can play a role. And in Peace and Sport, we are trying to setting up a sport diplomacy event that put on the field of play not a competition, it's a friendly match, it's a friendly game between athletes trying to promote the fact that despite the country they are coming from, something is possible. Dialogue, mutual understanding, or peace. And we have one big achievement. Everybody knows here about North and South Korea, what happened during the last Winter Olympic Games. You need to know that 1 year before, the two teams, one from the North Korea and the other one South Korea, met for a test event. You know, 1 year before Olympic Games, you have test events. It's in order to see if the Olympic Games will be well prepared. And the two teams met, and we were there with the international federations of winter hockey. And we asked the girls if they wanted to make a wild card. We will talk about that after. If they wanted to foster and to communicate despite political issues. And they accept to make something all together, and it was the start of something that happened 1 year after. The girls made the first steps, and then after the IOC made the different steps.
You mentioned it, the white card.
I mentioned
Everyone
it.
has one. Please explain to me what this is and what it means.
Yes, very quickly. Everybody knows the red card and the yellow card in sports. When you have a red card, it's not a good news. In Peace and Sport, we only love good news. So we launched the white card campaign. It's something that is now 6 years old. It's very simple. It's an easy way to be committed to the peace through sport movement. If you make a picture of you, a selfie, or a collective picture that we are going to do all together, it's a simple way, a simple gesture to say, I'm committed to the peace through sport movement. I truly believe that sports can make a change and can make an impact on the society. So if you all agree, you can find on your desk or on your chair a white card, and I will suggest that we all put it like this and to say, okay, today we are here in the United Nations, committed, and we truly believe that sports can make a real change. So please, raise your white card.
It's great to look around the room and see all the white cards up. Well, thank you both so very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And see you all tomorrow at 6 o'clock in the lobby.
We'll be there. Now I'd like to introduce a video message from Mr. Koji Murafushi, Sports Director of the Tokyo Organizing Committee of Olympic and Paralympic Games, as well as, get this, former world and Olympic champion hammer thrower.
Ladies and gentlemen, as Sports Director for the Tokyo Organizing Committee of the Olympic and Paralympic Games, I'm honored by this opportunity to address the distinguished audience here today. We now have fewer than 500 days left until the opening of the Tokyo 2020. We are proceeding with the preparation to ensure an exciting Olympic Paralympic Games that prioritize the sustainabilities. The organizing committee launched the concept of Be Better Together for the Planet and the People to demonstrate its commitment to sustainability, and some initiatives include manufacturing the medals from recycled metals, working to ensure that the Games will be free from all forms of discrimination and harassment, and signing on the UN's Sports and for Climate Action Framework. We have also signing on agreement with the UN to collaborate on raising awareness of the Sustainable Development Goals and actively communicate our contribution to the goals. Sports has the power to change the world and our future. We will keep working with all those involved in the Games to ensure that the Tokyo 2020 will mark an important step in realizing a sustainable society.
And now, I am so honored to be joined by Mr. Juan Pablo Salazar, board member of the International Paralympic Committee. Thank you. Everyone has spoken so highly of you. It's an honor.
I got, is this on? Yeah. I got the on Facebook, when they give you that memory thing, that remember? 6 years ago, I got the picture this morning on the Lend Your Leg campaign, Agnes. So it's beautiful to be back here in the UN and see that there are less mines, there are less landmines, there's less accidents, less victims, and we know that we're shifting cultures. So great segue, great to be here. So thank you very much.
Talking a little bit more about the Paralympics, let's talk about the coordination between the Paralympic Games and a host city and what goes into putting one of those events on, specifically related to the individuals coming to the city that may have disabilities.
Well, imagine, Tabata, that humanity figures out time travel, and we go to the future. The future looks like the Paralympic Games, yes? If we achieve the SDGs, that's the Paralympic village, that's how the world is going to look like, arguably, at least in terms of diversity and inclusion. Why? Because there are no barriers at all, not accessibility barriers, but mostly cultural barriers. So this is the work that local organizing committees have to do. This is what people in Japan are doing right now. We're very much looking forward to this. The Japanese know how to host a party, and they know how to invent the future, both. So we're looking forward. That's the responsibility, to create a bubble in time with no discrimination, full accessibility and inclusiveness for all.
Let's talk a little bit about your expectations for the 2020 Paralympic Games.
Well, the bar is very high. I mean, ever since the London 2012 Games, then Rio, now we're looking forward to Japan. So we know that this is going to shift Japanese society's hearts and minds. We know the importance of major events on regards of the accessibility legacy of a city that is already very accessible, like Tokyo. We are the third biggest event after the Olympics and the FIFA World Cup in regards to media attention and to ratings and TV ratings. So we know this is going to be a big party that no one should miss. Yeah. The joke we make with our friends of the IOC is the Olympic Games are the test event. Yeah.
See how those go
Yeah,
first,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, you can practice with the Olympic Games, and then the Paralympics are the real deal.
Now, before this event, I asked you if there was anything that you wanted me to make sure and ask you when I was up here. And one of the things you wanted to talk about was the legacy of the goals in regards to the SDGs.
Well, disabilities is a human rights issue. We are a civil rights movement, like there are other civil rights movements. Yeah, like gender, like race issues, like LGBT. The big difference is that since the motivation of discrimination towards people with disability is ignorance and not hate, meaning there's not a KKK against deaf people, or no one feels that their religious principles are threatened if blind people want to get married or adopt. So that's great, because we don't have any associated violence towards the discrimination of people with disabilities. It's bad at the same time because you can ignore it more. Yeah. So what civil rights movements want to do is shift cultures. Yes. The accessibility problems are the symptoms. The true sickness is inside people's hearts and minds. And there's nothing more powerful than sports to change that. So the legacy, it's a cultural legacy. Yes, we will have fantastic medals. Yes, we will have fantastic sports performances, but mostly we will send a very powerful message of inclusion to the world. So I think that the cultural legacy of major events regarding people with disabilities is just priceless. We know there are some issues with major events. IOC is on it. They have a thing called the new norm to guarantee more sustainability with major events. But when it comes to people with disabilities, we think that from a human rights perspective, there's no more powerful tool than sports to move the agenda and to shift people's hearts and minds.
Thank you so much. What a powerful way to say it, and thank you for leading the way.
Thank you very much.
Now, our next two segments, unfortunately, if you're watching online, will not be broadcast, but we do have a Q&A just after if you'd like to tune back in just a couple of minutes. This is now a video message from the International Olympic Committee Refuge Foundation.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Tabitha Lipkin for her wonderful moderation of today's conversations, and to all of our speakers. So, my name is Melissa Martin. I work with UN DESA, and we have about 9 minutes for comments and questions from the floor. Please press your speaker button right underneath the microphone if you would like to speak. When I call on you, you'll wait for the red light to indicate that the microphone is ready for you. So, do we have some speakers from the floor? Yes, third row at the back, please.
Yeah?
Yes, that's you.
Okay, I thought I was the second speaker, but very well. Many thanks to the organizers, particularly Ambassador Pico and Ambassador Al-Thani for their stellar leadership on this issue. We were pleased to partner with you last year on last year's World Day event. UNODC, the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, promotes the use of sport for youth crime prevention. This includes the development and piloting of the innovative sports-based program to train cognitive, behavioral, and social skills to at-risk youth called Line Up, Live Up, which Ambassador Al-Thani referred to earlier. Introducing life skills in sport programs allows practitioners and policymakers to use sport for more effective crime prevention and promote a culture of lawfulness, which in turn contributes to the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly those related to violence and crime prevention. The Line Up, Live Up program has generated much interest from member states and civil society by focusing specifically on crime and drug use prevention and using a multitude of sport disciplines. So far, more than 600 sport coaches and physical education teachers were trained, and they subsequently reached 4,500 youth so far. You can find out more about that by going to www.unodc.org. And I would just like to end by saying the success of that important program, which we are very blessed to have the great support and advice of Qatar to implement, is further demonstrated by requests to expand the program by looking at sport for PVE, preventing violent extremism, and sport in prison settings, another important population that we need to address. We look forward to working closely with all the partners here today, and hope that next year we even bring more people into this room. Congratulations on such a well-attended and well-prepared event.
Thank you very much. Do we have a question for any of the speakers from the floor? No, it's open to comments and questions. Okay, ma'am. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Minky Worden from Human Rights Watch. I'm also on the board of the Equality League. As all of our speakers have said, sport is very important for moving the ball on the SDGs, but it can also play a very important role in human rights. However, we have to recognize that in many countries around the world, women and girls, people with disabilities, as Juan Pablo said, and also LGBT people are unable to access sport. There is discrimination, and today the country of Brunei has passed a law allowing stoning of LGBT people. So I wanted to ask the panel, how can we use the power of sport to advance rights for women and girls, people with disabilities, and the LGBT communities around the world? And we need to do it, as Anne said, with a sense of urgency. So how can we do it this year?
Thank you for that question. Do any of our panelists want to respond? Please, Tabitha.
I think you have to lead by example. If you want to do it this year, then we need to start doing it this year, especially here in the United States, where we tend to be a leader in a lot of things in this world. So if we want to see that implemented other places in the world, then we just need to own it, and we need to show people what is and is not important and what we can do by coming together and supporting each other, no matter what divides us.
Just press your speaker button and wait for the red light.
Is that okay? Can you hear me? Yeah. Thanks for the question. And yes, there's an urgency.
I really believe, as we discussed about public-private partnerships, because people in the world have attention to first begin to do something, move, contribute, if there's some skin in the game and if they can see benefit from themselves, right? So what I work a lot with is to curate the right combination at the right moment. So we spoke a lot about using the big sports event around the world to have the difficult conversations, because that's where you have the world looking. So that's where we also need not just sit and have a joyful time by looking at the sport. We definitely need to do that. But at the same time, you also need to bring the difficult conversation and give it the attention. So that's one thing. Second thing, and by representing the private sector, is that the private sector is stepping up in a very big way around the SDGs. Because you can say, like, from the company that I come from, we really have a need to make sure that women all over the world get the education they need, get involved into decision making, get strongly represented into technology and any kind of industry we are in. So you can say we're all suffering if we don't get the voice of women, girls, in the right way into the industry and the way we work. So the only answer, kind of simple answer I have by saying a lot of stuff in between, is that I think the public-private partnerships, and then, as you point out, have women lead by as role models. And I actually have seen a lot of that already happening here beginning of the year. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that. I think we have time for one more comment. Oh, sorry, Juan Pablo.
Thank you for that question, Minky. I would say that the technical answer or the technical pathway to the answer or on how can we really land this is written down by the Kazan Action Plan. Yes, what UNESCO and the Commonwealth Secretariat are doing right now is generating indicators on precisely how it is that sports can impact the gender, LGBT, and disabilities rights agenda. Because it feels good and it feels safe and proper to say that sports move human rights, but unless we measure it, I think we will never get like proper data and science behind those claims. What is happening this year? This year is happening the technical work to raise those indicators from an academical point of view so that we have certainty on the true technical relationship between sports and these human rights issues, so that later, in a later stage, we have multilateral organizations investing and getting more cost-effective dollars to claim objectively that the impacts are impacting, that the agendas are impacting each other.
Thank you for that comment, Juan Pablo. So now we have time for one more comment. I would like to give the floor to the Director of the UN Interregional Crime Research Institute.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on this event. The two Madam Ambassadors, I think that this is a wonderful demonstration of the inclusiveness of that sports brings. I will be very, very brief. We all agree that sports brings feelings of trust, inclusivity, and cross-cultural engagement. In our institute, we're using sports for the prevention of violent extremism. What we're doing is, particularly in the Sahel Maghreb region, for example, we're literally given jerseys and fields and for football and basketball, so that returning fighters can have a connection with the communities that they work with. I also want to say that sports is such an attractive I'm from Uruguay, so I share the first World Cup in our region. And it attracts also, unfortunately, also negative actors. So uniquely, and other organizations were also working very hard on the security of the sports events. And we're going to be partnering with your country, Madam, to make sure that that security, there's a feeling of security for all the participants, for all the teams, for all the people who want to contribute. So sports has to be used for development and for peace. We have to leverage its appeal, its usefulness, its engagement for the benefit of the SDGs. And I think that this event is really a great accelerator of that, and I commend you for supporting and for everybody to attending this today. Thank you very much.
All right.
Sorry, okay, one more comment from Agnes, and we'll have to wrap up.
Thank you. A short one, maybe without raining on anybody's parade, but following on what you said, Tabitha. The sport is a facilitator, it's an enabler, it's a tool. But ultimately, all the very important critical societal issues that have been raised now, from human rights, LGBT, climate change, everything, the primary responsibility lies with member states. It is the countries that have the tools, the organizations, the structures to make the change. Sport will support this, but I think it would be misconstrued and misleading to think that because the Olympic Committee, NGOs, foundations, or some of us are acting in promoting sport in relation to the SDGs, we have the key to all the problems. This is not the case. We need to give back to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and the member states have to lead the way. Thank you.
All right, with that, thank you all for joining us today. If you could please leave by the third floor exit at the back quickly, that would be much appreciated because there are meetings about to start. Thank you.